I stared at my phone in disbelief, the words on the screen blurring as my vision clouded with tears. It was a simple text message, but one that shattered the foundation of my life with 3 brutal words: I want a divorce. Trent's message continued, each sentence like a dagger to my heart. I've been having an affair with Lila, and I'm leaving you to be with her. It's over between us. My hands trembled as I clutched the phone, a maelstrom of emotions raging within me. Anger, betrayal, and devastation fought for dominance, leaving me breathless and nauseous. Trent's timing couldn't have been worse. He sent this bombshell while I was at the grocery store, surrounded by the mundane sights and sounds of everyday life. In that instant, my world crumbled around me, and I found myself lost in a surreal nightmare. As I stepped outside, the crisp evening air did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. My phone buzzed again, and I flinched, bracing myself for another blow. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Trent's message read, I want full custody of the kids, and I'm going to fight for the house. Fury ignited within me, burning away the initial shock and pain. How dare he think he could just discard me and our family like yesterday's trash? After everything we'd been through together, all the sacrifices I'd made for him and our children, this was how he repaid me? You lying, cheating bastard, I shouted, drawing bewildered stares from passers-by. I didn't care. The dam had burst, and years of bottled emotions came pouring out. My phone rang, and Trent's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my voice trembling with rage. How could you do this to us? Cass, please understand, Trent began, his tone maddeningly calm. I've fallen in love with Lila, and she makes me happy in a way you haven't for years. Happy, I spat. You selfish prick. What about the vows we made? What about our children? I'm sorry, but it's over, he said flatly. I'll be coming by to collect my things tomorrow. The line went dead, leaving me standing in the parking lot, shaking with fury and disbelief. Tears streamed down my face, but I refused to let them diminish the fire raging within me. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The meek, accommodating Cassidy, who had devoted herself to her family, was gone, replaced by a woman who would fight tooth and nail for what was rightfully hers. No longer would I be a doormat for Trent's ego and indiscretions. If he thought he could just walk away and start a new life, leaving me and the kids to fend for ourselves, he was sorely mistaken. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was war, and I would show no mercy. With renewed determination, I marched back to my car, my mind already plotting my next moves. Trent wanted a battle? He was going to get one. And by the time I was done with him, he'd regret the day he ever betrayed me. The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache, a reminder of the emotional turmoil I'd endured the night before. But the ache in my heart was far worse than any physical pain. I forced myself out of bed, determined to confront the harsh realities of my new existence. First on the agenda, gathering evidence of Trent's betrayal. I rifled through his dresser drawers, my hands shaking as I uncovered damning proof, hotel receipts, charges for expensive jewelry, and worse, dozens of text messages exchanged with his little tramp Lila. You're the only one for me, baby, one message read. I can't wait to start our life together. Bile rose in my throat as I scanned through their sickening exchanges, each one more explicit than the last. How could the man I'd loved and trusted for over 15 years be capable of such depravity? The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my daze. I shoved the evidence back into the drawer and hurried downstairs, steeling myself for the confrontation. Trent stood in the foyer, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His gaze was cold, devoid of the warmth and affection I'd once cherished. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I told you I'm here to collect my things," he said coolly. "Now, if you'll excuse me—" "Like hell I will," I stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "You think you can just waltz in and out of our lives like nothing happened?" Trent's eyes narrowed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Cass. We're done, and it's time for both of us to move on." "Move on?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You've got some nerve, you cheating piece of—" "Watch your mouth," he snapped. "And don't act so high and mighty. You know things haven't been right between us for years." His words stung, but I refused to let him see how deeply they cut. "That's no excuse for what you've done," I hissed. You betrayed me, betrayed our family, all for some young floozy. Trent's face flushed with anger. Don't you dare talk about Lila that way. She's 10 times the woman you'll ever be. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Before I could stop myself, my hand lashed out, connecting with Trent's cheek in a resounding slap. He recoiled, clutching his face in shock. You crazy bitch! Get out! I screamed, shoving him toward the door. Get out of my house and don't ever come back. Trent glared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sank to the floor, my body racked with sobs. Amid the pain and heartbreak, a new emotion took root, a burning desire for revenge. Trent thought he could discard me like yesterday's garbage? Well, he was gravely mistaken. I would make him pay for every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of anguish he'd put me through. As I regained my composure, a plan began to form. I couldn't win by playing fair. Not against a man as ruthless and self-serving as Trent. No, I would have to fight fire with fire, and I knew just the person who could help me do it. Reaching for my phone, I dialed the number of my best friend, Jenna. If anyone could help me bring Trent to his knees, it was her. Jenna, I said, my voice thick with determination. I need your help. It's time to make that bastard pay. Jenna arrived at my doorstep within the hour, her expression a mix of concern and fury. That lying snake, she seethed as she pulled me into a tight embrace. I can't believe he did this to you. I fought back tears, determined not to let Trent's betrayal break me. Believe it, I said bitterly. The proof is right upstairs. Together we rifled through the damning evidence I'd uncovered, the hotel receipts, the jewelry charges, the sordid text exchanges. With each new revelation, Jenna's outrage grew. We have to make him pay, she declared, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. He can't be allowed to get away with this. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Trent thinks he can just walk away and start a new life with that little tramp, but he's got another thing coming. Jenna squeezed my hand, offering a supportive smile. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. We'll take that bastard down together. Over the next few days, Jenna became my rock, my confidant, and my co-conspirator. We pored over every detail of Trent's deception, looking for any angle we could exploit. It didn't take long to uncover his underhanded financial maneuvers, secret accounts, offshore holdings, all designed to leave me penniless while he rode off into the sunset with his new plaything. That deceitful son of a bitch, Jenna snarled as we pieced together the paper trail. He's been planning this for months, maybe years. Well, his little scheme ends now, I said, my voice steely with determination. I won't let him take everything I've worked for. With Jenna's help, I began gathering ammunition, records, bank statements, anything that could be used as evidence against Trent. We would hit him where it hurt, his bank account and his precious reputation. As the days passed, I could feel a remarkable shift taking place within me. The meek, downtrodden woman I'd been was fading away, replaced by a fierce, unstoppable force driven by a thirst for justice. Gone were the self-doubts and insecurities that had plagued me for so long. In their place was a newfound confidence, a belief in my own strength and resilience. I started taking better care of myself, hitting the gym and revamping my wardrobe. With each passing day, I felt more powerful, more in control of my destiny. Jenna noticed the change, too. Look at you, she remarked one afternoon, a proud grin spreading across her face. You're like a phoenix rising from the ashes. I flashed her a sly smile. You ain't seen nothing yet. By the time I'm done with Trent, he'll be the one reduced to ashes. Trent had made the mistake of underestimating me, of thinking I would simply roll over and accept his betrayal. Well, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. As I pored over the mounting evidence, plotting my next move, a delicious sense of anticipation washed over me. The game was afoot, and I was playing for keeps. Trent wanted a war. He was going to get one, and by the time the smoke cleared, he would rue the day he ever crossed Cassidy Monroe. A week had passed since Trent's abrupt departure, and I was ready to strike. Jenna and I had gathered enough evidence to bury him 10 times over, but I wanted the satisfaction of seeing the fear in his eyes when he realized his carefully laid plans were unraveling. I arranged for us to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in the city where we used to love grabbing Sunday brunch. The sight of it twisted my gut, but I refused to let Trent take that from me, too. He arrived exactly at noon, his expression a mixture of confusion and thinly veiled arrogance. "Cass," he said coolly as he slid into the booth across from me. "This is a surprise." I met his gaze, my own eyes steely with resolve. "Cut the crap, Trent. You know exactly why I asked you here." His bravado faltered for just a moment before the smug mask slipped back into place. "If this is about the divorce, I thought I made myself clear. This is about a lot more than that," I interrupted, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. "Why don't you take a look inside?" Trent eyed the envelope warily, but his curiosity got the better of him. With a dismissive shrug, he tore it open and began rifling through the contents, bank statements, investment records, all documenting the illicit financial web he'd spun. His face paled as the realization set in. "Where did you get these?" he hissed, his eyes darting around the cafe. "That's not important," I said coolly. "What matters is that I know everything, the secret accounts, the offshore holdings, all of it." Trent's hands trembled with barely contained rage. "You conniving little—" "I'd watch my tone if I were you," I warned, reveling in his discomfort, "unless you want all of this finding its way into the hands of the IRS and your precious Lila." His eyes widened at the mention of her name. "You wouldn't dare." A slow, vindictive smile spread across my face. "Try me." For several tense moments we stared each other down, the air thick with animosity and unspoken threats. Finally, Trent broke the silence. "What do you want?" he growled, his arrogance crumbling beneath the weight of his exposure. "What do I want?" I echoed, leaning back in my seat. "I want you to suffer. I want you to experience the same fear, the same humiliation, the same utter despair that you've put me through." His eyes narrowed. "You're delusional if you think—" "I'm not finished," I snapped, cutting him off. "I want full custody of the kids, and I want the house. Every last dime you've stashed away is going into a trust for them, one you'll never be able to touch." Trent's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this to me." "I can and I will," I said, rising from my seat. "Consider this your one and only warning, Trent. Play ball, or I'll make sure you lose everything. Your money, your career, your precious Lila. The choice is yours." With that, I turned on my heel and strode out of the cafe, leaving Trent to stew in the ruins of his shattered plans. A delicious sense of satisfaction washed over me. The game was on, and for once I was in control. As I stepped into the sunlight, Jenna fell into stride beside me, a proud grin on her face. "You were amazing in there," she gushed. "Did you see the look on his face?" I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. "Just the first of many," I assured her. "Trent hasn't seen anything yet." The battle lines had been drawn, and I was just getting started. Trent thought he could outsmart me, could discard me and ride off into the sunset with his little plaything. Well, he was about to learn a very painful lesson. You never underestimate a woman scorned. In the days following my confrontation with Trent, a strange sense of calm settled over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control of my life. No longer a helpless victim, but a woman taking back her power. Trent had gone into hiding, no doubt licking his wounds and plotting his next move. But I wasn't worried. The ball was in my court now, and I had no intention of playing by his rules. It was during this period of quiet that an unexpected ally emerged. Lila herself. The cheery ring of my doorbell one afternoon heralded her arrival, and I must admit I was taken aback by her presence on my doorstep. "Lila," I said, fighting to keep my voice even. "What a surprise." She offered me a hesitant smile. Her eyes clouded with uncertainty. "I know this is awkward, but I was hoping we could talk." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let her in. Whatever her game, I was curious to see it play out. We settled in the living room, an uneasy silence stretching between us. Finally, Lila spoke up. I saw Trent the other day," she began, her voice small. He was a mess." I arched an eyebrow, intrigued. "Do tell." Lila Worryline creased her brow. "He kept ranting about you, about some kind of evidence you had. Cass, what's going on?" For a moment, I debated how much to reveal, but something in Lila's wide, guileless eyes told me she was just as much a victim of Trent's lies as I was. And so I told her everything, the affair, the financial deception, my plans for vengeance. As the sordid tale tumbled out, I watched Lila's expression shift from confusion, outrage. "That lying son of a bitch," she spat when I'd finished, her hands clenched into tight fists. "He told me. He said he was going to divorce you, that we could finally be together without any secrets." I couldn't help but bark out a bitter laugh. Looks like Trent was playing us both for fools. Tears glistened in Lila's eyes, but they were born of anger rather than sorrow. "What are you going to do?" A slow, vindictive smile spread across my face. "I'm going to burn his entire world to the ground, and I could use a partner in crime." Lila's eyes widened, but she didn't recoil from the implied offer. If anything, her gaze grew more determined. "I'm in," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "That bastard needs to pay for what he did to us." And just like that, an unlikely alliance was forged. Two women, once pitted against each other, now united in their quest to take down the man who had betrayed them both. Over the next few days, Lila and I pored over every shred of evidence, every damning document, crafting a meticulous plan to completely dismantle Trent's life. We would strike at his finances, his reputation, his very way of life. No stone would be left unturned. Revenge took on an entirely new meaning as Lila and I worked in tandem. What I lacked in knowledge of Trent's personal life, she more than made up for, and what she couldn't provide in terms of resources, I gladly supplied. With each passing day, our bond grew stronger, fortified by our shared trauma and an unshakable thirst for justice. We were an unstoppable force, and Trent would soon feel the full brunt of our wrath. As we put the finishing touches on our scheme, Lila turned to me, her eyes blazing with determination. "You ready to make that bastard pay?" she asked, her voice laced with anticipation. I flashed her a wolfish grin. "More than ready. Let's light this candle." Trent's downfall was all but assured. He thought he could play us, could shatter our lives without consequence. Well, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The game was afoot, and we were playing for keeps. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I expected. Lila and I had meticulously plotted every move, gathered every shred of evidence, and laid the trap with exquisite precision. All that was left was to spring it, and watch as Trent's world came crashing down around him. It began with a series of anonymous tips to the IRS, detailing the intricate web of offshore accounts and shady financial dealings we'd uncovered. Within days, the auditors were swarming, and Trent's once immaculate records were being picked apart. Next, we leaked the incriminating text messages and hotel receipts to the local media, along with photos and videos that left no doubt as to the tawdry nature of Trent's affair. His sleazy exploits were plastered across every newspaper and news channel, his indiscretions laid bare for the world to see. I'll never forget the look on his face when he stormed through my front door that fateful morning, his eyes wild with panic and rage. "You crazy bitch," he roared, spittle flying from his lips. "What have you done?" I rose from the couch, unfazed by his outburst. "Me? I haven't done anything, Trent. I'm just an innocent party in all of this." His gaze shifted to Lila, who stood beside me, her arms folded across her chest in defiant solidarity. "You," he snarled, rounding on her. "You did this, didn't you? You vindictive little—" "Watch your mouth," I warned, stepping between them. "Your quarrel is with me, not her." Trent's face contorted in an ugly sneer. "This isn't over, Cass. Not by a long shot. You think you've won, but I'm going to bury you. I'll take the kids, the house, everything." I wouldn't be so sure about that. The new voice belonged to my lawyer, Mr. Davidson, who strode into the room with a grim expression. "Mr. Davidson?" Trent sputtered, his bravado faltering. "What's going on here?" The lawyer fixed him with a withering stare. "What's going on, Mr. Monroe, is that your underhanded financial dealings have been brought to light. The IRS is already preparing charges of tax evasion and fraud, and that's just the tip of the iceberg." Trent's face drained of color. But my money is being seized as we speak," Mr. Davidson continued, relentless, "along with your assets, your property, and quite possibly your freedom." "You can't do this," Trent cried, panic lending a shrill edge to his voice. "I'll fight this. I swear to God." Mr. Davidson shook his head, his lips curling into a thin, humorless smile. "I'd save my energy if I were you, Mr. Monroe. The evidence against you is overwhelming, and it's only a matter of time before the other shoes drop." As if on cue, Trent's phone began ringing incessantly, no doubt a barrage of calls from his frantic colleagues and erstwhile lovers. With shaking hands, he pulled it from his pocket, his eyes widening in horror as he scanned the incoming messages. No, this can't be happening. But it was. His sordid affairs, his financial crimes, every last skeleton he'd tried so desperately to keep buried, was being violently exhumed and laid bare for all to see. In that moment, I allowed myself a fleeting sense of triumph. We had well and truly dismantled Trent's life, bringing him to his knees just as he had done to me. As the reality of his downfall set in, Trent turned to me, his eyes burning with impotent fury. "You won't get away with this," he spat, his words laced with venom. "I'll make you pay if it's the last thing I do." I met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm counting on it." With a dismissive flick of my hand, I turned away, signaling the end of our interaction. Trent had been utterly destroyed, both personally and professionally, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The battle was won, and I had emerged victorious, lean, resolute, and unbowed by his attempts to break me. As Trent was led away, Mr. Davidson turned to me, a grudging respect in his eyes. "Well played, Mrs. Munro," he murmured. "Well played indeed." Lila's hand found mine, giving it a gentle squeeze as we watched the shattered husk of a man disappear. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but I was ready to face it head-on. Trent's betrayal had nearly broken me, but in the end it had gifted me with something far more precious, the strength to fight for myself and my future. As I looked toward the dawn of new beginnings, one thought echoed through my mind: let the karma begin. The weeks following Trent's downfall were a whirlwind of activity. Lawyers, accountants, and investigators swarmed around me, dismantling the tangled web of deceit he'd so carefully constructed. With each passing day, new revelations of his misdeeds came to light, and the full extent of his betrayal became glaringly apparent. Through it all, I remained stoic and resolute, my thirst for vengeance tempered by a growing sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over, and I could begin to rebuild my life on my own terms. Lila proved to be an invaluable ally during this turbulent time. We grew closer than I ever could have imagined, bound by our shared trauma and the knowledge that we had taken down a true monster together. "You're one tough cookie, Cass," she remarked one evening as we shared a glass of celebratory wine. "I don't know how you managed to keep it together through all of this." I allowed myself a rueful smile. Believe me, there were times when I wanted to curl up and just disappear, but then I'd remember what that bastard put us through, and it would harden my resolve all over again. Lila nodded, her expression somber. "He'll get what's coming to him. The courts, the law, they'll make sure of that." "I hope so," I murmured, swirling the rich liquid in my glass. "But part of me wants more than just a court ruling or a prison sentence." Lila arched an eyebrow, intrigued. "What did you have in mind?" A slow, predatory smile spread across my face. A little taste of his own medicine. The opportunity to exact my ultimate revenge came sooner than expected. One crisp autumn evening, a familiar figure appeared on my doorstep, a haggard, broken shell of the man who had once sworn to love and cherish me. "Cass," Trent rasped, his eyes sunken and haunted. "We need to talk." I eyed him warily, taking in his disheveled appearance and the stench of cheap whiskey that clung to him. "Talk," I echoed, unable to keep the disdain from my voice. "About what exactly?" "Your complete and utter disgrace." He flinched as if I'd struck him, but soldiered on. "Please, Cass, I'm begging you. Give me a chance to explain, to make things right." Despite my better judgment, I allowed him to enter, if only to witness the full extent of his pathetic groveling. Trent sank into the nearest chair, his hands trembling as he struggled to collect his thoughts. "I've lost everything," he croaked, his voice thick with emotion. "My job, my money, my reputation, all of it gone, because of my own stupidity and arrogance." I said nothing, watching him impassively as he slowly unraveled. "And Lila," a bitter laugh escaped his cracked lips, "she took off the moment the truth came out, took whatever she could grab and vanished, just like that." "Did you expect anything less?" I asked coolly. "She was using you, just like you used me." Trent's head fell into his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I've made so many mistakes, Cass. Hurt so many people, especially you. He lifted his head, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry for everything. If I could take it all back, I would in a heartbeat." For an endless moment, I simply stared at the broken husk of a man before me, weighing his words and pleas for absolution. Finally, I spoke. Did you really think some half-baked apology would undo the years of pain and anguish you put me through? I asked, my voice hard as steel. The lies, the betrayal, the disrespect. Did you honestly believe a few crocodile tears would absolve you of all that? Trent opened his mouth, but I silenced him with a sharp gesture. Save your breath, I spat. You made your choices, Trent, and now you're living with the consequences. You thought you could just toss me aside like garbage for some younger piece of ass, leave me with nothing while you rode off into the sunset? I rose from my seat, looming over his shriveled form with a cold, merciless glare. Well, you were wrong, dead wrong, and now you'll spend every day haunted by that mistake, tormented by the knowledge that you threw away the best thing you ever had on a whim. Trent's head fell once more, his body shuddering with ragged sobs. I felt no pity, no sympathy, only the grim satisfaction of a debt finally paid in full. Get out, I said, my voice laced with finality. And don't ever show your face here again. As Trent dragged himself from the house, a broken and defeated man, I turned to find Lila watching from the nearby doorway, her eyes shining with pride. Well done, Cass, she murmured. Well done. In that moment, I knew my long journey had finally reached its end. The scales had been balanced, karma restored, and I had emerged victorious. It was, in every sense of the word, a new beginning. The weeks following Trent's pathetic attempt at reconciliation were a whirlwind of activity. With the legal matters finally resolved and my financial security assured, I found myself facing an unfamiliar sensation: freedom. For the first time in years, I was truly unshackled from the weight of Trent's betrayal and manipulation. The future stretched out before me, vast and full of possibility. Lila remained a constant presence during this period of transition, her unwavering support and friendship proving invaluable as I navigated the uncharted waters of my new life. You've come so far, Cass, she remarked one sunny afternoon as we strolled through the park near my home. Just look at you. You're practically glowing. I couldn't help but smile at her observation. It was true, the haunted, hollow-eyed woman I'd been in the depths of my turmoil seemed like a distant memory. I owe it all to you, you know, I said, giving her hand an affectionate squeeze. If it wasn't for your help, your courage, I might never have found the strength to take Trent down. Lila waved off the praise with a dismissive gesture. Don't sell yourself short. The fire was always there. I just helped fan the flames a little. Her words rang true. The past year had been a crucible, a trial by fire that had forged me into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. The insecurities and self-doubts that had once held me back were gone, replaced by an unshakable sense of confidence and self-worth. As we continued our stroll, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I'd come. From the depths of despair and betrayal to a life brimming with promise and possibility, it was almost too much to comprehend. So, what's next for the indomitable Cassidy Monroe? Lila asked, a teasing lilt to her voice. I considered her question for a moment, letting the warm spring breeze caress my face. I'm not sure, I admitted. For the first time in a long while, I don't have some grand plan or objective mapped out. I think I'd like to just live, you know? Enjoy this new lease on life, stop and smell the roses for a change. Lila's face split into a broad grin. Sounds like a plan to me. Just promise you won't become a complete hermit, okay? I need my partner in crime around to keep me on my toes. I laughed, the sound rich and uninhibited. Deal. As the weeks melted into months, I relished the simple joys that had once eluded me. Lazy Sunday mornings, impromptu girls' nights out with Lila and Jenna, quality time with my children. Each day was a gift, unburdened by the specter of Trent's lies and manipulation. Of course, there were moments when the past would creep up on me, uninvited flashes of pain and heartache that threatened to reopen old wounds. But I found solace in the knowledge that I had persevered, that I had taken my life back from the brink and emerged stronger than ever. Trent was little more than a ghost, a lingering shadow that grew fainter with each passing day. I refused to afford him any more power over me or my happiness. As for his ultimate fate, I cared little. Rumor had it he'd slunk off to parts unknown, his wealth and reputation in tatters. A part of me hoped he was suffering, dwelling in the pit of his own making, but the larger part simply didn't give a damn. He was a specter of the past, and I was too busy embracing my future to dwell on him any longer. With Lila by my side, I embarked on a new chapter, one filled with new adventures, new joys, and a newfound sense of liberation. The road ahead was unknown, but for the first time in ages, I greeted the uncertainty with open arms and a radiant smile. Wherever life took me, I knew one thing for certain. The specters of the past held no power over me. I was the master of my destiny, the author of my own story. And this time, I was writing one hell of an ending.